Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We are back with another incredible guest. Today we have Baljit Rayat. She's a certified sexologist, authentic tantra practitioner, Akashic Records consultant and teacher, intuitive mentor, DJ, and producer. She's committed to raising the vibration of humanity and has worked with thousands of people worldwide to up-level their lives by uncovering the truths of who they are, at the core, creating profound results in their businesses and relationships. She believes that everything in this world is energy, and getting to the root of desire by connecting people back to their sexual power causes a powerful ripple that spans all areas of life. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So tell us how you got started into all of this. Or a little bit more about your background.
Yeah. So way back in early 2000, I was actually an architectural technologist. I was in the architectural industry for 7 years. And between 2003 and 2005, I had a panic disorder and had depression. So I felt really disconnected from my work and felt like something really needed to change. And I was on antidepressants as well, but I felt like I wanted to really heal holistically, and I had no idea what that looked like. And I somehow came across a homeopathic doctor. I didn't even know what homeopathy was, and worked with her, and also a naturopathic doctor, to just heal naturally, to go deeper into what the panic attacks were all about. And then I realized that my emotions were really disconnected from like my physical self, and also from my mental self as well. I just felt really disconnected, even though I looked happy on the outside and was living like the Sex and the City life. Inside, I felt really disconnected. And also, I was such a people pleaser, and I didn't even know that it was basically a trauma response of fawning. I always wanted to make sure everyone on the outside, even my family, my culture, was taken care of, to make sure that I felt safe in my body. So I did that at work as well. And I just had like a massive burnout. And that's also what led to the panic disorder. So then when I took some homeopathic remedies, pretty much within 4 months, I just came out of this dark tunnel. And within months, that's how I discovered the Akashic Records. I met my former mentor and dear friend, and she did a session on me. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is so different from a psychic reading, because a psychic will tell you one trajectory, but the reality is we have many trajectories, and we can choose the least choice path, the mediocre path, or the most choice path. And what I recognized was I kept giving my power away to psychics to tell me my future, but nothing was happening. And I realized that I needed to make those shifts internally. And that's what the Akashic Records really helped me with. And then that's when I was like, I need to learn this, and really delved into the holistic realm of energy healing. And then I was like, working full-time in architecture. So I had 2 different lives. And then by 2009, I decided to go full-time into my coaching business and teach the Akashic Records and teach people how to really connect to their purpose and gifts. Fast forward to that, I noticed when people wanted to know what their purpose was, there was a parallel in regards to their sexual energy. Whether if they've had sexual trauma, or some things not going right in their relationship, or they were really lacking to connecting with their sexual energy and avoiding at all costs and treating it like a side dish versus the main dish, how that literally paralleled with how they showed up in business. And I started to track the patterns and the similarities. So I always say whatever happens in the bedroom happens in business. And that's how I became a certified sexologist, because I usually get people that literally tell me their problems like physically, like on a sexual level. And by bringing compassion to that, and also healing and discovering how to reconnect to that, and I want to say de-armor, how that actually shifts everything with how they show up within themselves, how they're able to speak their truth, how they're able to show up in their business. And then through all of that, the DJing and the music making also came about too, obviously. So yeah, that's my story in a short form.
Wow, it's a long journey of development and change and changing your careers. So I know you speak a little bit about misdirected sexual energy and how that affects and like impacts your purpose and your gift and your business life. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So misdirecting your sexual energy means that you're avoiding your sexual energy at all costs. And how that can look like is that it could show up as addiction. You know, for some people, it could be porn addiction, it could be food addiction, where you don't want to deal with those emotions, or maybe the lack of, it could be a fear of your own sexual power. For some of us, we may have been programmed to be afraid of our own sexual power, or dealt with jealousy or competitive energy with other women. So it's like perceiving each other as a threat. So how often do you minimize that? And so we can minimize our own creativity, and just how we show up. And sexual energy is beyond just the byproduct of orgasmic sex. It's the way that you show up and how you use it. It can go into having a lack of healthy boundaries as well in relationships, even with friendships and with clients. It's like a constant bleed through. So I've noticed with people, when they're misdirecting their sexual energy and how that shows up in business, is that they're going overtime with the hours that they're working with their clients, or they're devaluing, you know, their pricing, and not really honoring how they want to show up, and they're kind of compromising what everyone else wants versus what they know that their soul needs to be. And so all this misdirect leads to, it's the root cause is the fear. It's like this fear of actually really connecting to our sexual energy, because there's so much taboo with it, and there's so much programming as well. And that programming can come from cultural upbringing, could be religious, could be parental, it could be societal, like what we were taught in school, social media, so many things that literally imprints a belief system that says, hey, it's not safe. And so then that misdirect happens, and it just stays. I call it like the 3 lower chakras. Like we have our solar plexus, and that represents power. But if it's reversed, it goes into control. And then our sacral, that's our sexual reproductive organs, and that's our, obviously our creativity. And when it goes into reverse, we're not able to create, we feel stagnant. And it can go into manipulation. And then we have our coccyx, like our root, that's actually all about security and well-being. And if that's in balance, we feel insecure and we feel ungrounded. We don't feel in our body. So these are all different levels of misdirecting our sexual energy. And then by healing it, you're able to redirect it. And it does take time. It takes compassion as well to really change that up.
Yeah, I love that. We often talk about and apply it in our businesses and with our clients about how everything is so interwoven and interconnected, and people like bento box everything, which definitely love to bento box things just to like make sure shit's getting done. However, you touch on a few core aspects, and it's funny, Amanda and I always get on early and we chat about the call and what's going to happen. And, you know, I'm definitely more of the woo-woo side, and we were kind of joking about that. However, like, even if you're not, and maybe you haven't explored like Akashic records, which I love, and homeopathy, I mean, you're speaking like my life. At the end of the day, these simple things, which simple but complex, really do affect everything that we do and how we show up. And I love how you've broken it down, and really, because it can be kind of taboo to talk about our sexual energy, and depending, like you said, what cultural background we're from, cultural background, and or where we live, or even the family that we were brought up in. So I guess my question for you would be is like, how do you kind of, what are maybe some tips or some breakdowns of how you get people to really start to lean into like that is something that I need to work on?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually I'll get a lot of people that'll just start dancing around and they'll email, they'll be like, hey, I really want to do this, I'm just not ready. And it really depends on the readiness factor. So if they're not ready to go fully all in, because it can be really daunting for someone to talk about sex in general, or talk about, I've dealt with so many women and men, but women in particular, and especially older, like, I don't want to say older, I want to say women that are in their 60s and 70s, that all of a sudden they're now like ready to like fulfill their purpose, like live their mission. And they know the sex piece is such a big thing. And they've got some trauma from, when their uterus was taken out, or birth trauma, and they've never talked about it to anybody. So for anyone who is experiencing this like hesitancy, it is normal, because we were just raised to not talk about it in a way of learning how to have compassion and really connect with it. So I would just start journaling. What I like to tell people is to draw a line from like 0 to your current age and just randomly write down. It just will feel like automatic writing. Just write down from, and you obviously are not going to remember much when you're like just a baby, but you might remember something, who knows? Just any memory where you felt violated sexually, and it's going to, or just any kind of sexual thing that made you feel awkward. It could be just even getting your period and then writing it down how it felt, but going to the current age, and you're going to see some pattern there, like an actual pattern. It's the first thing for you to be like, oh, like this is why this happens in my relationships. Now I could see that this actually happens in my business. And once you're able to connect the dots and you feel ready to shift it, then obviously you can hire a professional who's obviously trauma informed as well, because when you're working with sex, you have to be very mindful of really understanding the nervous system and how that works as well. And that was the other reason why I became a certified sexologist, because I also kept getting people that were, yes, we're doing the healing and stuff like that, but it's easy to not be embodied because they're not connecting physically. And I feel like that's really important, to be in your body in order to really show up and to do your work.
So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, because like you said before, there's a lot of taboo feelings around the whole sexual culture and how it represents, and of course, how men and women represent it, and both inside a workplace as well as projecting it at networking events and so forth. And there's a lot of discussion around sort of this toxic sexuality and how that really is projected in the business world, both for men and women. It's not just the men that are toxic or the women that are demure. Like, that's not really what's happening in the world. And you can go through cycles that do show up in other areas of your life. It's not I know it's hard to believe this, folks, but we're not just one thing. We're all the things all woven together. And so it does show up in really interesting places, and you can trace the patterns if you look for them.
Once you have someone that says they're willing, which I think is really important. I love that you said that in your last kind of blurb, is that they might dance around, they might internally know, but they're not like ready and willing to put in the work. What are some of after the journaling, after them to get to recognize the patterns, which, guys, those of you listening, patterns help us unravel so much in all aspects, like anywhere from marketing to obviously our sexual energy and where it's showing up and how it's showing up in our lives, because everything has a cause and effect, right? So after all of that is done, how do you, and they're starting to notice their patterns, tell us how you walk through individuals, because essentially you are helping them live more in purpose, live more of truly who they are, reclaim some of who they are back if they need to reclaim that. I'd love to, it's kind of two-part. One is like, what are some of the other tips that you would give our audiences, or kind of the points, but also like, what's the, talking about cause and effect, like what's the after, like how are they showing up after? Give some examples of after, because I think that's important both in the personal and in the business world, because when we do that healing, and I love that you said, because I often talk about like so many people like go through the motions of healing, but they don't really embody the healing. And I love that you said that, because there is a clear disconnect.
Yeah.
And you can, for those of us who really have done both, like you can really see it when you pay attention. So I'd love to know both sides.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is depending on the readiness factor. And it's simple as, you can use this anywhere, just asking yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how ready am I to shift this? How ready am I to take up on this amazing opportunity in front of me? Even if it's so amazing, your internal mechanism might be like a 3. And so you want to be at least a 7 out of 10. If it's like a 6 or lower, then you want to ask yourself, and this will require for you to have a moment to go and write down in your journal and be like, well, what would make it at least a 7 or even a 10? Like, what is it that I need to do? Do I need to hire a mentor? Do I need to go talk to a friend or a parent? Like, what is that thing that's going to help me shift? Maybe I need to change the way that I eat. Like, it could be anything. And so how I bridge that to when I'm working with my clients, everyone's different. Like, everyone has their own story, and it's so profound. So it's really catered to what they're needing. But what I do is, before I even get them to connect with their genitals, literally, like I actually get them to learn how to do vulva mapping and also yoni mapping, so they become familiar with that, and also see the mirror images of how that shows up in business. We start with the energetics first, because I'll do like a 90-minute assessment where I ask them all these questions about their background, their sexual background, their history. It's really, really important. There's so many gems from it, because there's things that they don't, it's not a normal thing that you normally talk about, about when you got your first period, or how was your mom's birth with you? It's just like all these conversations, all these topics that you don't normally talk about. And what that does is that it actually gives me an actual root cause of why they're having these issues in the bedroom. And sometimes, actually most of the times, don't even know what's going on. It's like, here's what's happening over the surface, but I know there's something deeper. And I also know it's impacting how I'm showing up in business and just in general. So with that 90-minute assessment, that's like the game changer for me. And then I know, okay, this is what we need to do next. So then I normally start off with like an Akashic record session, because, well, let's work through these blocks, because in order for you to feel safe to connect to your genitals, we need to, clear whatever happened. And could be rape, it could be, an illness that they had, or it could be something really, we all have macro and minor, or either macro and micro traumas that has happened to us that we don't even realize affects how we show up. It could be someone that you dated, your first boyfriend or something, and how that literally relates to, how you show up in life. And so then I get them to do the practical things of connecting to their genitals. And that's when I can tell where, if there's any resistance, because some of them will be like, I tried, I couldn't do it. I just looked down there and I couldn't even touch myself. And I'm like, okay, that's great. That's perfect. And we just take our time. So everyone's very different, but they start to de-armor. So not only does their sex life improve, whether it's solo or with a partner, but they start to show up so differently with their business. They'll start to notice that more opportunities are happening, because when you have blocks, you're just either consciously or subconsciously contracting. You don't even know it. So even like last week, I had a client, she was like, oh, I just got invited with like another, a collaboration that I just didn't even think of that was even going to happen. I've had clients who all of a sudden they have all this creativity. They like launched their books. I have a lot of people writing books. And so that creativity starts to come back. And it's because you're actually tapping into a deeper wisdom. You're actually not working from a headspace, and we need our logic. Our logic is very important, but you're actually connecting your heart to the genitals and then being like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do next? And then it's just a different way of showing up, and people like improving their relationships as well. And the business things like the results is even downloading a new program. There's just like creating their products. Like it's like a lot of creative stuff starts to come forward, but it's very natural.
I love that. And I cannot stress enough that regardless of how woo-woo audience you are or unwoo-woo, is that when you have blockage, regardless, even if you look at it from a mechanical standpoint of view, when there's blockages or a scientific standpoint of view, even like in a machine, when there's a blockage, obviously like things can't get through. You don't have that natural flow or movement that's supposed to happen. And inside of our bodies and energetic, mentally, spiritually, like when there's blocks, because we have all of the above, then we're not able to show up truly in the essence and in the power that we can show up in. And I love that and I have a really best girlfriend who does very similar things that you do as well. So we're having this conversation all the time. And I love this. And I love to watch like the people in our network kind of like go through this and like see these little pokes in the veil of the blockage, or in that belief blockage that we kind of like cram up and throw in the corner and just don't look at it again. And it's such a beautiful process that I feel like the majority of the world doesn't necessarily like recognize as really not just healing, but more importantly, reclaiming, stepping more into in so many different aspects. And I feel like I'm actually like bastardizing what really it does. You know what I mean? Because it does so much. Like when you dig into those places and start to clear out the clutter and allow light to shine in there and allow, and I've done, actually, I just wrote about it in the book that's my most recent book about like went to a seminar where it was going back to your birth. And it was absolutely one of the most powerful things. It was a 2 or 3 day thing. And it was one of the most powerful things. It was completely shifting for me at that point in my life, in who I was and how I showed up. So I love that you're doing this work. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. And you said the word so perfectly. It is reclaiming. It's like reclaiming what's already innate within us. It's just we're decluttering all the programming that we've taken on since we're a kid. And once we really understand that, it's like, oh, it's beyond woo-woo. It's like once we really understand that, then we're like, okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you could leave the audience with one more tip, piece of advice or aha moment, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. I always like to tell people to set their intentions. So every day when I wake up, I like to set my intentions of how I choose to show up and how I choose my day to be like. So it'll be like, please allow me to be grounded in my power and my truth, remove any and all interferences between me and my clients, and allow me to be a crystal clear conduit so that the day is just miraculous and wonderful. So we can never intend how we want others to show up because they have free will. But what it does, it sends a telepathic message saying, hey, I choose to show up this way. How about you? And if they're not willing, it's okay. They might cancel the appointment and great, you've got more free time. But it also allows you to really reclaim how you want to show up. Like it's when we don't think about that, it's like we don't declare that, then other people will choose for us. So it's a great practice to do. It's like brushing your teeth every day. And it's just like you can do it in the shower while you're putting on your makeup or whatever. But setting intentions is very, very powerful. You can do it in business. You can also do it in the bedroom. So
Absolutely. And for those that are listening, I know that you have a special offer for our guests.
Yes, so it's an activation. And so basically what this is, it's a really big tune-up if you are feeling just out of place and you're just feeling scattered and you just need something to really connect back to yourself. You just be in a private, uninterrupted space free of any distractions. You can have a notebook and pen, or you can just like lie down and just relax as well, just to receive it. So it's like a mixture of like energy healing as well, but it's a way to help with the nervous system and just bring you back to yourself.
Excellent. And for men and women, correct? I just want to clarify.
All genders. Yeah.
All genders. Wonderful.
And of course, that will be in the show notes. That's Unlock Your Sacral Power Energy Activation. It is in the show notes. If you're listening to this podcast on another platform, you head back to the pursuitofbadasserie.com/podcast. That is where you will find all the information. And where's the best place for people to find you?
Yes, you can find me on my website at baljitrayat.com, or I'm more active on my Instagram at I am Baljit Rayat.
Awesome. So make sure you're following her. Oh, this was lovely. I feel like I could talk to you forever. I might be calling you after the podcast. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And please, for those of us that are watching, listening, or just zoning out to our podcast, like, share, comment. Make sure you're passing all these golden nuggets along to all of the people in your world who need to unleash, unlock, and reclaim.
100%. As always, my friends, get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.